our episode today, losing a loved one.
Yeah, something that you don't always want to talk about, but in both of our situations, it's something that we have unfortunately experienced in similar ways. And, I just feel like, and I know you do too, that it's something that other people can benefit from, to kind of hear our experiences, what we've been through, and maybe we can
Yes.
be there to help support somebody else or just to provide them some guidance or things that we were thinking and feeling and, just how to maybe not how to deal with those situations, but just kind of how we got through it and how we're still getting through it today.
Right, because no one's ever alone in a situation like that. And for some people, it's just comforting to know that there's someone else who may not have coped as well as they did, or
Yeah.
just kind of navigated through it the same way. So that's what we're here for. That's what we're
Yes.
going to talk about.
Yes.
Um, do you want to break your terrible news first, or shall I dig in?
So you can go first.
All right. So there are three very important people I've lost in my life: my grandfather, my grandmother, and my mom. Both my grandparents were my mom's parents. I've had a very strong relationship with all of them. I've lost them all at completely different times of my life. So,
Mhm.
my grandfather, I was only 4. My grandma, I want to say I was 19, 18,
Was it?
18
Yeah.
going on 19.
Yeah. Something like that.
Right. And then with my mom, I was 28. So, was I 28? I was 28 because I was turning 29 that year. It was 3 years ago.
I don't know. You had me thinking,
I
I'm like,
was,
how old was I when?
yeah, I didn't have my 29th birthday yet. So I was still 28, but I was
Gotcha.
turning 29 that year. Um, all completely different kinds of losses. You know, all of them technically actually died from cancer, now that I think about it,
Yeah, it's crazy.
which is, it's so enraging. Just
Yeah.
something like that to take people away, and it can just be from lifestyle habits or from genetics. Just
Yeah. I mean, or even in my dad's case, kind of neither.
right.
Mm.
And
Yeah. It's a
it
horrible thing to
sucks
go through.
regardless.
Yeah.
Right, because losing anyone regardless just sucks. But it kind of wasn't until this moment that I actually thought about, like, wow, they all pass from the same kind of reason of
Yeah.
cancer.
It's crazy. I guess it is and sometimes hereditary though, because everybody well, not everybody, I'm not gonna say everybody, but a lot of people on my dad's side of the family died of cancer, and, so did he, which is what we'll get into later, but, you
Yeah.
know, it's interesting when you look at it.
Yeah, the history of my mom's father's side is a lot stronger than her mother's, but um losing my grandparents early was hard because you look at other people who have had their grandparents for years and years and years, and you're just kind of like, oh, well, yeah, you don't really get that same kind of bond, but
Yeah,
I did get to have a really, really good bond with my grandma,
definitely.
and it was hard. I was a part of taking care of her while she was in her sicker days. She didn't drive as much, so I got to drive her around. And, it was honoring in a sense because she wanted me to drive her. Where before she was not letting me drive her anywhere.
No.
I was not the one to drive her anywhere, but, she wanted to, like, have me as her chauffeur for when she needed to go do little things. Um, so I was grateful to get those little moments with her. I
Yeah,
lived with her. So,
yeah,
I had more opportunities than my cousins even did to have a bond with her.
right. Well, it definitely makes it harder too, you guys were with each other, like, day in and day out. She was your
Every
rock,
day.
yeah,
I lived with her since I could remember. Not
yeah,
since I was born, but since I could remember. So, that was like losing a parent rather than a grandparent.
mhm,
So, but it was hard because it got towards the end of life for her, and things were more stressful because I was very involved. I remember talking to, I want to say, my aunt. I like kind of yelled at her because of being so upset about
mm,
being so involved in my grandmother's caretaking when my grandmother has so many children that could be more involved than myself as her grandchild. So
Yeah.
that was stressful. You really don't think about how much stress comes about
You don't,
when,
'cause you just deal with it when you're going through it.
right.
Yeah.
But to take that on at that age,
Mhm.
I didn't think of it as a chore at that time until it started to build up and become too much.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, I was the first to find her after she passed away. We had some family friends come and visit that day, and they didn't necessarily go in because my grandmother was resting.
Mm.
And, they kind of just hung outside, and I was getting ready to go swimming with Nan, our boyfriends, and I went to go say bye to my grandma. And I noticed that she wasn't breathing. And that was just something I got used to doing, was just kind of standing there and watching her to see if she was breathing,
Yeah.
because you just know it's going to happen eventually,
Right.
And I'm the type of person, I'd rather be proactive than reactive. I'd rather just kind of set myself up to be ready for it rather than just continue to hope for the best and not have any type of realistic expectation around the situation.
Yeah, well,
So,
kudos for you on that one because I know when I was first going through it, uh, it was a hard reality to grasp at first, a little in denial at first.
of course, I think that's common for most people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would commonly think, is there something wrong with me? Because I feel like, not that I have to experience things the same way as others or react the same way as others, but I always felt I was on the least common path, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was hard. So, the family came swooping in, my uncles, and they're like all over in the yard crying. Like, it was just crazy to see my family so distraught from my grandmother's passing. That was their
Yeah.
mom. So,
But then she was kinda like the glue for you guys, no?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that's common for a lot of families that have that grandmother who did all the cooking, and at that point I had to freaking cook my own dinners because she was always cooking for us. So
Yeah. Hopefully she taught you a few things too.
she didn't teach us much.
Oh.
She was the type of person to be like, if you're in the kitchen, you're gonna learn while you're here. If you're not in the kitchen, then you're not gonna learn. Because she was not just gonna straight up be like, yeah, I use this amount of this and this amount of that and blah blah blah. No, we weren't getting that. But we found the recipes taped to the cupboard door
Mm. Mhm.
a couple years after she passed. We
Oh.
felt dumb as hell.
Wait, 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 wait. You didn't know that they were there the whole time?
Girl, these recipes were taped to the door since I opened the cupboard the first time ever in my life.
So
I
you
wasn't
just
paying
kinda like
attention.
yeah, it just, like, ignored it like it
It's
wasn't
like
there.
paint on the wall. It's just
Oh my
there.
god.
Like,
That's crazy.
what the hell was I supposed to know?
Just
Yeah.
sitting there the whole time.
Oh my gosh. But so yeah, so that was like my real first death that really affected me, because my grandfather, I didn't know. I was little.
Mhm.
And then my mom's, I would never say that I'll be done being affected by it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's it was a little shocking, but not shocking at the same time.
Mm.
Just a year of going to appointments with her. She had a mastectomy done. Dealing with her in the house, walking around with no shirt on, with one boob, and she's just all empowered. It was
Oh,
crazy.
go
And I'm like,
ma.
I have company coming over. Like, you put a shirt on. Like, you better tell them don't look this way. You know my mom.
Yeah, definitely. I could
Ridiculous.
totally hear her saying that too. She was a
So
character for
embarrassing. I'm
sure.
like, that should have been motivation to move out, but whatever. Glad I didn't, though. Glad I didn't.
Alright.
Um,
So you'd be bored without her in the house.
I'm bored now. Shoot, I don't have to. If she was still here, I wouldn't have to live with her for sure. But just to have her entertainment,
Mm.
I like the other day a memory popped up from when she was on the news, because we had this like hurricane
I think
blast
I
through.
remember that.
Yes. And she was just so animated on that. It was literally a 15-second clip, if that. And she was just like, you seen her whole personality shine through her little 5 seconds of the limelight.
I was
And
gonna say
she
that's just
was,
who she was.
yes, she was so excited. But um, just a a quick sum up of that situation. It was literally in and out the hospital very often. She self-diagnosed, found breast cancer herself, went to the doctors, got it confirmed that's what it was,
Wow.
which is a big thing. The doctors always tell us, right? Check, check, check. And we usually either do it, we don't do it, we find it, we don't find anything. But in her case, she found a lump, was diagnosed, got a mastectomy, was in and out the hospital for, um, just a few different reasons.
Yeah.
And literally a year that she was cancer free from that mastectomy,
Mm,
she passed away.
that's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, it was a few days. It was so she passed on a Tuesday. That Saturday, I brought her to the hospital because I don't even want to explain the situation, but it was just the scariest moment, second scariest moment, I'll have to say, actually, of my life, because the
Mm,
first time was a month before that in the hospital with her.
mhm.
So second scariest moment of my life. And 2 days before she passed, she pretty much freaked me out because I called. No one knew she was in the hospital except for me. And I called her. She didn't answer. Now I'm just concerned because I'm like,
Right.
what the hell?
Yeah, answer
I
me.
don't. Who else am I going to talk to?
Yeah.
To make sure she's good. I mean, of course, I can call the hospital, but she answered and she let me know that she's not going to make it much longer, and that that was it, pretty much.
That
And
is literally the hardest thing to hear your parent say to you.
yes,
The hardest.
the hardest and the most respectable thing.
True, true. At least
Be
they didn't lie.
right, because she set me up because she knows how I operate. I need that shit in advance.
Yeah,
So she allowed me to be able to cope with it in a way better than if I didn't hear her say that,
yeah.
which that crushed me. My sister had to pick me up from work, bring me to the hospital, see my mom. Like, I couldn't do anything else that day. Um,
'Cause she told you that over the phone?
Over the phone.
Yeah, that's tough.
I think I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I don't blame you, I wouldn't either. That's
Yeah.
tough.
So the next few days I took off from work. That night she told me that she wasn't going to make it much longer. The doctor let me know that she also has pancreatic cancer.
Jesus.
And yeah, things went downhill very quickly.
It's crazy how that
Um,
happens.
they asked me if I want to put her on life support.
Ugh, don't that
Like,
is oh gosh, that's such a horrible decision to have to make. It really is.
right. Like, you,
No one prepares you for that at all.
as much as I like to prep, and forgive me for any type of laughing, but that's my coping. Like,
Yeah.
it's my coping. It's my way of saying I'm in disbelief as to, like, I've lived these things, because sometimes I'm so shocked that I actually, like, went through these experiences. Like, these experiences are my experiences. Like, I'm not talking about somebody else's story right now, which it can apply to many other people,
Yeah.
but this happened to me. I'm still in shock about it sometimes.
Yeah, I feel you.
So, it I would say that it's really important for us as people and for the ones we care about, is to make sure you have these types of conversations
Mhm.
in the sense of your medical well-being, having a will, things that will affect your family when you're not here, or when you're not, or when you're in a state of not being able to choose for yourself.
Yeah.
I had to tell them no to a life support machine
Mm.
because my mom and I had that conversation.
Right.
And she said, if I don't come back to my normal self, or if I can't come back to my normal self, I don't want it. And
Yeah.
she said, because then the family's going to have to be putting in all this money and effort for what? Which sounds terrible, because it's like, we love you and care about you. But at the same time, I understood what she meant.
Right, and, at least you guys were able to have that conversation so you didn't have to be the ownership of, what that result looks like.
Right.
It's a hard one to even have to, like, agree to, but at least you, at the end of the day, didn't have to be the one to make that decision.
Right. Yeah. So, family and friends came those last few days. Um, the same day we put her on hospice care actually was the same day she passed.
Oh, God.
And I remember my aunt was saying, I don't know if you should stay here tonight. You should probably go home. Um, you know, just advising that I stay at home rather than stay at the hospital with my mom in case anything happened. And I said to her, I don't know what I'm going to do tonight,
Yeah.
but I'll figure it out. But I knew deep down inside I wasn't leaving.
Right. It's
I
it's yeah, it's hard to pull away.
right, like my last moment, like she's like my mom's gonna pass by herself all
Yeah.
alone. That's
Yeah.
not that's not okay to me. And I know my aunt didn't mean it in any way to be negative, but I know she was more concerned about how I would be around it.
Right, right, yeah, she's just looking out for you at the end of the day.
hmm
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have superpower strength. I like to call it. So,
Hey,
my
when you're in those moments, you find some kind of weird strength inside yourself, and it just comes
Ooh,
out, and you just, like I said, you just deal with it while you're in the middle of the fire, you know?
you're never put in a situation that you can't handle.
Right. That's
You're
true.
really not. Unless you're, like, in some fucked up shit, then that's a different story. Just
Yeah.
saying, that's on another note.
Right.
But, yeah, so me, my sister, and 2 of my cousins were in the room for most of the night, laughing, telling stories, having it just like we kicking it at the house type of thing, and I was able to be there when my mom took her last breath and, just be able to say my goodbyes, and it was sort of settling in a sense because now I knew she wasn't suffering.
Yeah.
She went through a lot. She went through a lot that year.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
she was like, her soul was able to rest, like
Mhm.
let that body go because that body ain't you. That just was the house to your soul. But
Yeah.
her soul was finally able to rest and be released. So I'm
It's definitely
glad that
yeah.
I'm glad it went the way it did and not any worse.
Isn't it weird how you look back at it and you're like, in the moment, you're like, this is the worst thing, you don't want it to happen, but then
hmm
at the sometimes you're just kind of like, in a weird way, it happened the way it was supposed to.
Yes, it's within this like how grieving has stages.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as that because when we're currently going through it, we're thinking about ourselves in a sense of
Mhm.
what we want and what we desire, and we're not necessarily always looking at it as what's best for what that person is going through
Yeah.
and how it's affecting them. And yes, we can look at both, but it's just why? But then I think about what if my mom was still here today with COVID?
I think about the same thing too.
I work
Kinda.
in the public.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to live with her. I don't know if I'd be able to see her.
Right.
Like
Well, and their immune systems are so weak at that point too, it just wouldn't have been a good situation.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
and just to think that was 3 years ago, and then COVID came about. It really came about in late 2019. I don't care what anybody says, but it came about big in 2020. So
Yeah.
it really wasn't that much long after.
No, not at all, that's true. It was,
Yeah,
yeah, right around the corner.
but definitely grateful for what I've learned through all of this. Just learn to do more with my life. Not that my mom didn't, but she worked hard and a lot,
Mhm.
but wasn't able to get a lot out of it. And I want to go about that differently, in her honor in a sense. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. She was quite a woman. She had the most bubbly personality, and let me tell you, that legacy that she left behind her was
oh,
just beautiful. She was
she
just
was
such a beautiful soul.
a trip. My favorite funeral I've ever been to. You would never probably hear anyone say that in their entire lives, but
No,
her
not at all.
funeral was my favorite. We were all decked out in not everybody, but a lot of us had on Raiders gear because she was an Oakland Raiders fan to the day she died. No matter how good or bad, mainly bad, that team was,
Yeah.
she repped it
She's a
hard
fan, true
body.
fan.
Hard body. She talked shit to talk to her about her team. She would just shit on you so quick. She don't care if her team was trash. She'll find a way to shit on your team. Simple as that.
Well, take it to the queen bee over there.
Queen bee.
She's a diehard.
Yes. But share with us your experiences because I know when it comes to the two of us and losing our parents, I am the more open and willing one to talk about it.
Ah.
Um, but your battle has been a lot longer than mine.
That it has, um, in the unfortunate setting. Um, so as you just stated, it's not something that I talk about very often, but you always hear people say that sometimes it could be good therapy for you. And so not only that, but I do think that, my situation was almost rare in a sense because his cancer isn't necessarily the most common type of cancer.
Mhm.
So actually back in 2005, he was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma, at the base of his tongue. And just to kind of give like a quick little backstory about how he even found out about it in the first place was I guess he had ran into an old friend who told him that he sounded funny.
Mm.
But, like, if you haven't seen anybody in a long time, you wouldn't necessarily think like, you wouldn't take credibility to what they say because like, they haven't heard me in I don't know how long, but,
Exactly.
how would you
Yeah,
know that I
like
sound funny?
right.
But something in my dad just made him go to the doctor and get checked out. So he went to the ENT, which is an ear, nose, and throat doctor,
Yep.
and after, like, biopsies and things, it was determined that he actually had a tumor the size of a lemon in the back of his throat. So they told us that if he hadn't gone to the doctor that day, he would have died within the next like 2 to 3 months because it would have just kept growing and ultimately would have suffocated him.
And he never felt it,
He never felt it. Which
which is
is crazy if you think about it. If you really think about like a lemon just like being like lodged in the back of your throat, you know?
right. This is why
Um,
it's good to go to the doctors, people.
exactly, and get checked out because the minute that they went down there, they knew something was wrong, but they just didn't know exactly what it was. So kind of fast forward from there, he ended up going through a lot of radiation treatments and he actually only did one chemo treatment. He was supposed to go through more, but his body just couldn't handle it. He
Mm.
got extremely sick. They had to do some kind of like infusions and stuff just to kind of like get him stronger. And so he was like, I'm just doing that one. I'm not doing any more, even though they wanted him to do more. And he just carried out his radiation which ultimately, I want to say by like a year later, so maybe like 2006, is when he was completely cancer free.
Yay!
So kudos to L&M Hospital and all the doctors there who helped him, get rid of that. He wasn't able to eat though for an entire year because radiation
Mhm.
actually closed up his throat. So that was a struggle within itself. And so anybody who's going through that and knows, kind of like what a peg tube is and having to be fed through your stomach and stuff, that was a whole nother experience.
Can
Um,
I just interrupt you real quick?
yeah, go for it.
I always remember that you ate so slow in support of your dad. And I would just say that as your friend in high school, we joked about it and I apologize because knowing the severity behind it now, because I feel like I knew what was going on then, but I didn't know like a lot of details.
Yeah.
But you also weren't really one to go too deep into detail like that. So,
No, I
you
was
know,
going through it.
it was kind of, kind of just what it was. But as an adult, I definitely would want to express my apologies to you in that aspect. Even though we were teenagers and it was just out of fun and it was never to be harmful, but knowing that you had so much respect for your dad to take your time eating while he was eating because you knew what he was going through and it would take him some time to be able to do the same is huge.
Well, thanks for that. And trying to hold back my tears right now
I'm
because
sorry.
that
I'm
was
sorry.
totally unexpected. But I appreciate the apology, and you know me.
Hey, we keep it real here. We keep it real here. Just
It
saying.
must not have affected me that bad because I didn't really remember that you had done that.
Well, you're also not good at remembering a lot either, so, um,
I
just
know, I know.
thought I'd let you know.
Um,
Sorry for interrupting.
no, 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 I'm actually kind of glad that you said that too because I'm still that way to this day, actually. Um, just seeing the way that he had to struggle to even swallow anything when he was able to start eating again, and the fact that with every single bite, and I'm literally every single bite that he took, he couldn't just swallow it because the radiation
Mhm.
had damaged his throat so bad. He
Yeah.
had to take it down with like a sip of like a drink, whether it was like water, soda, whatever.
Mhm.
And so if you can imagine trying to eat like a whole plate of like steak and mashed potatoes or something like and having to cut it
Right.
up into like little pieces and then take
Mhm.
it down, with drinks and stuff. And I feel like I was the only one who actually kind of like tried to just eat with him. Whereas like it
Yes.
would be me and, I won't say names or whatever, but like we'd be all sitting down like eating dinner and stuff and everybody else would just like scarf down their food and they would just kind of like, get up
Be
and
done.
be done. And I'm just kind of like, he just like started eating. Like you're just gonna like leave,
Go.
you know?
Right. That's how you know
So
y'all had a good bond too.
yeah, like I just felt bad, when you're there with somebody and I was one of his primary caretakers and stuff and just seeing the struggle and stuff, you never want to make somebody feel isolated or worse than they're
Correct.
already feeling. And so, I just tried my best to make him feel comfortable in the way that I could with the situation that he was going through at the time. Um,
Big respect.
thank you.
Big respect. I mean, as a teenager,
Yeah, I was like 16. We
that's
were in high school.
you know what I'm saying? Like that's a big respect.
Yeah, I
Big
remember
respect.
not really going out and doing too many things and hanging out with friends and stuff because I had to be home and take care of him.
Yep.
So I kind of had to grow up a little quickly in that sense, but in a weird way, I wouldn't take it back for, for anything. So
I
as
don't
long
blame
as
you.
I was there for him. But so kind of fast forward from that, it was a rough, year and a couple years after that while he was still trying to learn how to live this new lifestyle. He was gratefully able to be cancer free and able to enjoy another 11 years of his life.
Yes.
So kudos to that. That
Yes.
radiation did certainly work wonders until one day in, I would say now it's got to be like 2016. I don't remember exactly why he ended up going back to the doctor. I think it was just like another checkup because even once you're cancer free, you always have
Have to go.
checkups,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how long you're cancer free for, because that shit just comes back whenever it wants to.
An apple a day does not necessarily keep the doctor away.
Not at all. So he had gone back to the doctor, and I remember this was actually just after I had surprised him at a Relay for Life event to celebrate his 11 years. And we even took a picture together, which you guys can, I'll try to find it and post it on the Instagram page later. But we celebrated his 11 years. And then, like a couple of weeks or something after that, he was actually diagnosed again with throat cancer. This time it was closer to his vocal cords. And so, since he had already been through chemo and radiation, that was no longer an option for him. And so, the only other option was to start looking at surgery, which something my dad always said was once you open yourself up and air gets in there, it's just kind of like a wrap and it's just going to like spread like wildfire.
Ugh.
Turns out that he wasn't, too off from that assumption,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So he ended up having surgery very shortly after that because the doctor said it was very serious that he had to make sure that we took that out immediately. And so they ended up having to remove his vocal cords. And so 2016 was actually the last time that I was able to hear his voice.
Mm.
So I kind of went into like a maniac mode and like I had saved like every single like voicemail message or anything that I had of his because it was the last time that I could actually, hear
Hear
him
him.
talk, Gratefully he was still with us. Um
Yes.
but it's different when you have to go to those, lifestyle changes and things like that.
Right
Um
when you're used to that mostly of your life.
yeah, and I can't imagine being in his shoes and being like, okay, today like I'm fine in a way, and then tomorrow I'm gonna be a completely different person.
Yeah.
Um, so that surgery actually took, I wanna say, like, 8 hours. It was a very a very long and rough day, for me and my
Mhm.
mom who waited in the hospital for him all day. And if there's anything about my entire experience, I would say that that one is probably the most traumatic.
Yeah.
Because seeing him in the ICU when he got out of surgery is just not something that I ever want to see. It's something you never wanna see your family member go through, and
Right.
to see, like, tubes and just, like, blood everywhere, and he started to become conscious when he shouldn't have been,
Oh,
and it was a bad situation, and we had to call the nurse in and, care for him, and I actually literally, like, ran out of the room and down the hallway into the bathroom.
yeah.
Um
That I couldn't even imagine that because it's already bad enough that it's your parent. Your parents, if your parents have not been weak at any point in your upbringing,
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden they become weak and they're the ones you have to help care for, it really is a hard thing.
definitely. It's not something you ever wanna see, especially because that's your parent, that's the person that protects
Right.
you and, they're the strong.
But then when you add the hospital and then ICU and CCU and like
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. It's
It
a
is.
lot.
Um, and that's in any situation, not necessarily what we're talking about, but just in general,
Correct.
you know?
Correct.
You never wanna be in one of those rooms, so kudos to all those doctors and nurses who see that kinda stuff on a daily because it's a lot.
Every day. Yes.
And so with that, um, you know, that was a long recovery process. It took a while for him to learn how to speak in his own way. They actually gave him, um, I'm trying to think about what the name of it was, but they basically gave him kind of like a microphone that he would put up to his neck,
Yep.
and he would have to try and vocalize words that way. And it was more of like him trying to speak through, like, vibrations. It was kinda weird. It was hard for him to get used to it because he couldn't feel his neck because of the surgery, and so he would never know, like, where to, like, put it without, like, looking at himself in the mirror. It was If you've ever been through something with somebody that's gone through throat cancer and they've had this kind of a surgery, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just not easy. And
Does
he would
sound
get
like it.
frustrated.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk forever and go into details about the surgery he had and all this kind of stuff, but I that's too many details, and I'm like, I see it in my mind vividly.
Yep. Don't
Um,
overwhelm yourself.
no, so I'll just kind of go over just a little more overview aspects, and if you guys have questions, please feel free to reach out and ask. I don't mind talking about it. If you guys have questions, I can certainly answer them and help you out through the process. Um, so it took him a while to recover from that and learn kind of how to get back into society with not being able to talk. He was worried about his job, how that's going to affect things, and so on and so forth. But the doctor was able to get all the cancer out, thankfully. So here again, we're cancer free, we're in the clear, we're good to go. Well, fast forward a couple months, he started not feeling well again, and it turns out that the cancer was back.
Mm.
Um, we at this time were kind of like contemplating on what to do, what we should do, because now they're talking about having to remove his tongue and to have a glossectomy, which is obviously not something that he wanted to do. And so I was able to find a doctor in Boston, which is supposed to be one of like the best hospitals for throat cancer.
They have good
And
specialists up that way.
yeah, they definitely do. Um, so we took him there, and they didn't really have anything good to say. They basically said like, "There's nothing, that we can do for you." But his other doctor was willing to try and do another surgery to take it out. So this time they did a glossectomy. He lost, well, a partial glossectomy, I'll say, because they
Hmm.
didn't take out his entire tongue. It was just partial.
Uh,
And they removed it was his external carotid artery because it started to go up the carotid artery, and it was spreading to like the base of his skull.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so that is never a good sign either because once it, starts spreading and going up there to your brain and stuff, that's just not where
Take
you want it to
over.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this time in this surgery, now he doesn't have a voice and now he can't really eat because he only has half of a tongue. The doctor, I'll say, was not able to get clean margins, is what they call it, and remove all of the cancer. So he just went through all of that and he wasn't cancer free. There was pretty much nothing that they could do for him at that point. So he was pretty much kind of on like comfort care in like a way. The
Mhm.
doctor in Boston put him on a lot of pain meds just to keep him comfortable.
Yeah.
And one day it just kind of really got out of control. I'm really glad that I wasn't there for this one day. I want to say it was like July 1st of 2017. My mom like rushed into the hospital because he was just like coughing up like blood everywhere.
Oh.
Which I guess turned out to be like he was coughing up tumor.
Oh my gosh.
And just hearing the way that they talked about it was like horrifying. So I just can't. I'm just glad that I wasn't there for that.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Just no way. No. But pretty much July 1st was kind of the beginning of the end in his situation. They tried to explain like hospice and palliative care to us, and it's not something that I comprehended at first. I didn't really understand what was going on. Um, and he just kind of like looked at me and said, um, one of the things that you never want to hear somebody say, and again, he doesn't have a voice, but we were we were very close and had a really tight bond, and so I was really good at lip syncing with him.
Yes.
Um, and so pretty much he just kind of like looked at me and he told me, unfortunately there comes a time where you just can't fight anymore. And hearing him say that, I knew, you know, he wasn't going to fight anymore.
He went through a lot.
He did. And he did everything that he could do. And I know that's what he wanted to do because he wanted to do it for us,
Yep.
more so for him. If it was
Mm.
just for him, I don't think he would have went through any of that, to be honest with you.
But he had his girls.
He did.
Mhm.
Somehow he pulled through it. I don't know where he got that courage from. I think about it all the time, and if it's something that I'd be able to do myself, I don't know.
I'm sure you have it within you, but like we said, it's not until you're in those moments when you realize the strength that you have.
Right. That's true too. So it was a long month of him being in the hospital. All he wanted to do was go home, but he just wasn't in a state to where he could go home. I kept driving back and forth from Connecticut to New York to see him all the time in the hospital. And I remember like 3 weeks into it, I was just kind of like, I don't know how much longer I can do this for. I need like a little break.
Mm.
Because it was really at that point just kind of like waiting for like the day to happen.
Right, because it's you just already know
Yeah,
when you've come that far, and especially after him having that conversation with you, you have an understanding of what to expect.
right. After it took at least a week for it to sink in.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure.
because we were still feeding him by the feeding tube, and the nurse was just kind of like by you continuing to feed him, like, you're pretty much torturing him at this point, and you need to just, like, stop feeding him.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to take him off of food and everything, and I think that's when me and my mom, like, really kind of realized, like, what was happening.
Oh my, I'm sorry, but that's that's almost as rough as your parent telling you that they know it's time,
Yeah,
because it's like you're telling me to stop caring for my parents so they can move on to the next life.
right. And yeah, and not being able to, like, actually hear him say anything. Because after a while, he wasn't really conscious. He was, like,
Mhm.
conscious, but, like, he wasn't really there, you know?
You're just comfortable.
Yeah, well, not even that. He looked like he was in a lot of pain every time that they would try to, like, rotate him and stuff.
Oh.
Anyways, um, so on, uh, July 30th, it was a Sunday, and I told myself I wasn't gonna go back to Connecticut that week, but for whatever reason, I woke up on Sunday, and I was like, I need to go to the hospital." So I drove all the way to Connecticut. I didn't tell anybody I was coming. I just went to the hospital. Because there was something I knew deep down that like I had to tell him that I was being selfish and I didn't want to tell him. And that was telling him that I was going to be okay and that it was okay for him to let go and do what he needed to do. And so I went there and I had that conversation with him. And you unfortunately were also in the hospital that day with your mom.
Correct.
And so after I stayed with him for a little while and, comforted him and I felt like it was a time I could actually come down and see you and your mom. I did that and we talked for a little while and stuff in the hallway.
Per
And
usual.
yeah, and in the back of my mind, no offense, the whole time I was just kind of like, okay, like I came here to see my dad. Like I love you, I love your mom,
Mhm.
but like I don't know. I just something was like pulling me back into his room. And
Oh, you're good.
so we ended up leaving your mom and you came upstairs with me to just see my dad. And we kind of talked and hung out with him for a little while. And then I just remember like looking over and like noticed like his breathing was changing. I feel like it started getting like really fast, I want to say.
Mhm.
And then like cuz that like caused us to like look over and being like, what is going on?
Right. Yep.
And then he just kind of like released like the biggest smile possible, which I so wish to this day that like I would have thought to take a picture of it, but I was just so in the moment.
Yes. That
And
smile was huge.
it was the biggest smile and it was such a comfort. And then after that, he just kind of like the smile just like disappeared and he was like limp. He
Yeah.
had gone at that moment and I don't think that I like kind of realized it, but I didn't realize it. I was like, Amanda, I was like, did like that just happen? Like what I think just happened? Did that just happen? Um,
Ooh,
and
gosh.
I can't thank you enough for being there. I'm sure that wasn't easy for you, especially because like I said, your mom was also in the hospital.
No,
Um,
it wasn't.
so I don't think I've actually ever thanked you for
You did.
coming up there. Did I?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, you did. Your mom did. Um, like I've mentioned before, I feel like those moments that are weird or like where I feel like it's really odd timing for me to be here, m- in all reality aren't odd. Like like
Yeah, you're
in
supposed to be
in
there.
some dimension I'm supposed to be there.
Yeah, you
But
were.
to me it seemed odd. But I definitely remember that moment sitting there with you. And that moment was so similar. I mean, I know your dad passed before my mom, but that moment of how he passed when we were just in the room and able to have, kind of like a good time, like girlfriends just kicking it, just
Yeah.
chit chatting, hanging with your dad. It was the same way with my mom. Just that good energy around them, and it allowed them to feel okay to let go, because, you know, your dad knows how close we were or are, I should say, because that shit ain't over.
No, definitely not.
But, you know,
Yeah,
he knew you're okay, like you told him. And then I think him hearing us in there,
yeah.
she has support, she's okay.
I think so too because he definitely loved you, and
Yes.
and I think yeah, after me having that conversation and then like just hearing us together because they
Mhm.
say they can always hear you. They might not like be there,
Yes.
but they can certainly hear you, and I
a
truly believe that.
1000%. Same here.
Um,
Same here.
I think it did give him the comfort, the extra comfort he needed.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is just so weird when you really like look at it. And people might think that like we're sitting here crazy and stuff, but I'm telling you guys, if you have not been through a similar situation, you really won't get it.
Yeah. I sit here and I'm like, I was there. Like, and aside from my mom, like going through what she was going through, I still had to go back to work and regular life. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, how you been? Like, my mom's in the hospital and I was just there when my friend's dad passed away.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, I like
Just leave me alone.
like I don't understand right now, like what's going on. And it was hard because all I could really think about was you and your mom in that time. Just
I was not telling her nothing. Remember,
and
I
yeah,
called the nurse. I was like, "Nurse," I was like, "Can you call my mom, please?"
right.
It's like, I'm not
Right.
doing it.
Like, I'll never forget just his smile and then him passing, and I'm just like and you just look at me like, "Did that just happen?" And I'm just like, I
I
feel
know,
like
poor you.
I can't even talk to her right now. I'm gonna go get a nurse. I'm gonna get a nurse. I just leave to get a nurse because I'm like, there's nothing I can do for anybody at this point. But
Yeah.
and I find a nurse and I'm like, I think my friend's dad just passed away. And they're like, what? And I'm like, why don't they move fast enough around here? Like,
I
what?
know.
Just follow me. Like, don't ask me what. Just come with me, please. Like,
Right.
I just left her in there by herself. Can you just come back to the room with me, please? Oh my gosh. I was just, you don't see me physically frantic.
No.
Mentally, I'm frantic, but I will never expose that. Like,
Yeah, well, kudos to you because if you freaked out, I don't know what would have happened,
but
but
that's my whole thing is that because I'm like, if I freak out, what's she gonna do? Because this
yeah,
isn't even my dad. This is her dad. And if I freak out, she's gonna lose it. And then I'm like, who's gonna pick her up and put her back together if I'm already frantic? you
right.
know, I'm like, I just want to be support in this moment, and I can't lose it because if anybody's gonna lose it, it has to be you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it was the time for you
Yeah.
to lose it if that's what you needed to do. But
Well, and I feel like for me, I'm normally pretty good about keeping it together when I'm around other people. Um,
mm-hmm.
so if it was just me, it probably would have been a little different. But I definitely try to keep it together when I'm around others for sure.
Yeah, you do pretty well with that.
Which, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, couldn't really tell you, but that's just kind of how I
It's just what it is.
go through it. Yeah.
This is true.
Which, kind of brings us to just a general topic of grief, um,
Mm-hmm.
and how to deal with it. Um, you know, not to sound cliche, but everybody hears that you all grieve in your own different ways, whether that's losing it hysterically, whether that's, some people laugh, some
Mm-hmm.
people just go silent, people don't have any effect at all, some people don't care. Whatever that means for you, it's fine.
It
Um,
is.
for me, like I just said, it's me trying to keep it together when I'm around others, and when I'm by myself, trust and believe, I do definitely lose it. And even still to this day, it's something that never truly leaves you.
No.
For me, we just passed the 4-year mark. How it's been 4 years already, I don't know. But it's something that it truly never leaves you. There's always something that pops up and kind of just like reminds you of them, and you just like either laugh and just like remember like the good memories, or you just like completely lose it and you're like, what is happening to me? Like, why am I like acting like this right now? I don't know
It's
if that's
true.
happened to you, but for me, it's
Um,
kind of like either one or the other.
for myself, well, I know I didn't even grieve right after it happened because I literally moved out of my apartment in a week and a half
Yeah, that's crazy. You
because
had, yeah, more.
I had real life still going. Not that no one else had real
You had
life, but
lifestyle
I had
changes.
more life things going on aside from just my mom passing. I had to worry about the next month's rent and the way
Right.
we split bills. Rent wasn't on my tab,
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But luckily my cousin was able to take me and Chewy in. Chewy's my dog. You'll see him on our
Chew
page as
it.
well. Um, you know, it's hard to get an apartment with a dog that is part pit bull and looks like they're part
Yeah.
pit bull. you know, it just doesn't work out. So I didn't really grieve right away. There are times where I was by myself at night and I'd cry and be upset. I smoked weed to get through
Mm,
just to relax myself because I was always tense. I'm naturally high strung as a person anyway, so I think my body's just naturally tense. But with that on top of it, it was no help. Um, but I think my mom's personality helped me to have less sadness around my grieving
yeah.
because remembering her, you always have something to laugh about because she was just so goofy and just did the wildest shit or
Sure did.
unbelievable shit, and it it helped in that sense. But I eventually got a therapist because
Yeah.
my grieving, I felt like it wasn't normal. I
Mm.
felt like I wasn't sad enough. I felt
Aw,
like
see, but you can't feel like that.
but
Well, you know,
I did.
not
Like, I did.
invalidating your feelings, but,
Yes.
to those listening, just because you might not be sad doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong with you.
It's true. There really isn't. Um, I think I had less sadness because of I keep such a realistic expectation, and sometimes I expect the worst.
Mm,
So then that way I have less room for disappointment. That's the type of person I am. I will allow the least amount of room for external disappointment. I will allow myself to internally disappoint before the outside disappoints me.
yeah,
So I just didn't really make room for sadness.
I can
But
see
I
that.
had a lot of anger
Yeah.
um, around the hospitals, around the doctors, and what more I felt like they could have done.
Mhm.
So I think
I feel like
my
that feeling's always gonna be there too. You always feel like you could do more.
yes, yes. So I think my anger was on a higher level than my sadness, and then my blood pressure went high at some point in my life after she
Mm.
passed, and I think it's because of my anger. Like I was just internally so angry. So I
Yeah.
did pick up therapy, and having that reassurance that I'm not crazy, or there's nothing wrong with me for not being as sad with my grieving, um, was helpful.
Yeah.
And I still take therapy. I'm still in therapy. I don't talk about my mom as much anymore. Not that I feel 100% settled,
Mhm.
because that's not the case. It
Yeah,
will,
you never
like
will.
we said, it'll never be over. It's always on my mind, way often than I'd like it to be,
Yeah.
but it's my mom. I'm not gonna just not think about her.
Right, yeah, I probably think about my dad at least, like, once every day.
Yeah, you
In
have
some
to
form
though.
or fashion, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. So, um, yeah, grieving is just it comes in waves, and there are times where you think you're good and you're not, but it's okay because we can't keep it together all the time. We're only human, and it's okay to be hurt, and it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to feel confused, or like whatever emotion you feel is okay. But the
Yeah.
main thing is, as long as you're able to come back whole at some point and not allow it to depress you. And if it does depress you, find support. Have a
Mhm.
support team, have a
Definitely.
therapist,
It's important.
have some type of anyone that you can reach out to be able to just keep you afloat when those times are extra hard.
Yeah, you definitely need something, whether it is friends or family or therapy or yoga class or I don't know,
A
whatever.
pet.
Yeah, whatever it is, make sure that you do something because it can certainly eat you alive and it can quickly take over you.
Yes.
Um, and like Amanda was saying, whatever feeling that you're feeling, just allow yourself to feel it. And it's okay if you get lost periodically, but
Hmm.
always try to do your best to just kind of bring yourself back because
Yes.
you will certainly get lost in it
Yeah, and you'll get triggered by many things. Um,
all the time.
I'm personally triggered by the people who have no respect for their parents. I'm just gonna say that. And I get it that not everyone has a good relationship with their parents,
Yeah,
because that's only real life. But for those who do have parents they should be respecting more than they do, kills me sometimes, because I'm just like, your parent could just not be here like mine.
right.
And I try not to be bitter about it, but I be bitter about it?
Yeah, it's hard not to be sometimes, for sure.
Yeah. So, but those are when I'm like, okay, Amanda, check yourself. Where are you at? You had time with your mom. I appreciate the time I had with my mom.
Right.
This is someone else's life. We all live different lives.
Yeah.
Can't dictate anybody else's life. You're okay.
Yeah. It can definitely
You
be a
know?
double-edged sword sometimes too because it's like you are extremely grateful for the time that you had with them, but it's also like they were ripped away so early. Like,
Yes.
what about when I have kids and when I get married and like all these other big events in my life? But it's like, okay, yes, they were there for, college graduations and moving and, all these other things too. And it's just kind
Mm-hmm.
of, it's It's tough either way because you
Yeah,
always want more. Um, but that doesn't mean that you don't appreciate what you had, you know?
right. And it doesn't mean that they're not with you still either. I know
Right.
everyone has different beliefs. Um, I'm just gonna put it out there that mine is that my mom is here with me at all times. She is just an extra level of protection that I have that is guarding things that I do, the life I'm living. Um, because I already know that I wouldn't have or be where I am without her from when she was here.
Yeah.
And I would just only believe that even though she's in a different dimension, she's still protecting me and taking care of me.
Right.
And she still loves me. I mean, it's not hard to
Definitely.
not love me. No, I'm
Oh
just joking.
god.
I was her only child, damn it. So, shoot, she didn't have to share any love.
You are crazy.
You see,
But
I get it from my mom.
you certainly do, because if you only knew the spitting image you are of her, it is
Oh.
ridiculous. It's crazy. Just the same person. It's like the weirdest thing. It really is.
And
But
I try not to be, but those are things you can't adjust.
no, no. Those mannerisms and the way you speak sometimes, no, no matter how hard you tried, you could not stop that from happening. It's
Oh my
inevitable.
gosh.
You just gotta
Oh my
embrace it.
gosh. I mean, I would compliment you in the same way, but you already shitted on me when I said you would be your dad's son. So,
Hey, he acted like I was. He wanted a boy,
right,
and he was upset that he didn't get one when I was born because 'cause I'm the 2nd child, and
right.
so he created me into the tomboy, and I pretty much was his son. He used to always say that we're 2 peas in a pod, and we're the same
Seriously.
person except for our I was gonna say
Well,
female parts, but
your reproductive parts.
yeah. He would say that all the time, and I'm like, "Oh my god, dad, like, can you please not?" It's like, "What's
Uh,
wrong with you?" But it's true.
seriously.
It's if you only knew. We were literally the same person. It's kinda
No,
creepy, but
for real. Y'all do look very similar, though.
yeah,
Even though
that
you're,
I don't see, but
I see it. I don't care. You gonna just tell me I don't see it? No, fine. But no, I
no,
see it, and I
but
know other people see it. It's just because it's you. That's all.
yeah, sometimes it's hard to be able to see it for yourself, but
Hmm.
I'll
No,
take
I
it.
definitely
He was
agree.
handsome.
I definitely agree. I will definitely say too, though, for those of you listening, and you are going through a hard time currently with a loved one, or you have just someone in your family that's sick, and you have to help be a caretaker, and you have to work. FMLA, family
Yes.
medical leave of absence,
So
is
important.
a tool. It's not really a tool; it's a resource, but it allows you to be able to miss time from work. Um, I don't know if every employer has that. Do you know that or no?
I wanna say that they do, but don't quote me on that because
I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
it's illegal for every employer to not have it, but
Yeah.
especially if you're like in big corp or governmental type of jobs,
Right.
you usually will have FMLA. But I used it. What it allowed me to do was to go to my mom's appointments. I had intermittent FMLA, so I was able to leave and go to her appointments
Mhm.
as needed, and or if I needed to miss work, I had excused absences. I wasn't paid, which is okay, but my absences were excused, so it allowed me to not lose my job due to uh poor attendance.
Yeah, mine was similar. I definitely did use mine too, and I used it for the same thing. I did intermittent to be able to go there for doctor's appointments and like long hospital stays because whenever he was in the hospital for surgeries and stuff, you better believe that I was in there with him
Mhm.
24/7, except for like he would force me to go get food or whatever. But I was always there. So I side note, I can't imagine people that are going through life with COVID right now and not being able to be there with their loved ones in the hospitals and things because I don't know how I would have survived without being able to be there.
Right.
But that's a whole another topic. But mine was similar. I did get paid for my leave because they gave us like a certain amount of time that we could use. And um And it was after you use that time, that it would be like leave without pay pretty much. You were still had like the excused absences, but you wouldn't, get paid for it.
Yep.
But that was only after like a certain amount of time. But anyways, FMLA is a super resource. And if you guys don't know about it, make sure that you educate yourselves about it for sure.
Yeah, because it will definitely at least help to hold your job. I know some employers are, more lenient than others, but where I'm at, we have a strict attendance policy. So, you know, I just highly recommend it because I'd really hate for someone to be going through a time of trying to care for a loved one and then also now you're about to lose your job.
Oh God, yeah.
And say if that loved one is your significant other and they do pass away and you lose your job, what are you going to do?
Yeah, no, that's a horrible situation.
That is like the worst place to put someone. So, it's just very important that we throw that out to y'all that's listening. So, you just have that resource in your side. But please reach out to us with any questions you have, any suggestions you may need in the sense of dealing with anything, or even if you just want to hear a little more about our backgrounds, about, what we went through and how we went through the situations with our parents.
Yeah, and make sure you guys write into us too and tell us your stories and your situations. We want to hear what you guys are going through as well. And maybe we'll even read some aloud, depending on, how much time we have and how long or short they are. But we definitely want to hear from you guys and hear your stories too.
Thank you guys for listening to our very first episode of Mindset Talks podcast.
It definitely wasn't an easy topic, but we hope that it touched you in some way.